All right, welcome to Insights from Inside. I'm so glad you've decided to join us today. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics. This time of year is my favorite time of year. I've got my birthday coming up and it's beautiful outside and it's finally cooled down here in Florida enough to open the windows and be outside without overheating, and it's just a great time of year. And Thanksgiving is actually my favorite holiday, which I know is a little weird. Not everybody likes Thanksgiving. I usually host and I really enjoy getting the family together and all the prep work that it takes, and it's just super fun and I just love it. So we are going to get into a topic this month for November that's one of my favorites. It's called the growth mindset. Today we're going to be talking about the growth mindset. Isn't just like this version where we tell our kids good job for trying and call it a day. Like, that's really important to have a growth mindset in front of your kids, but also it's really important that you actually live it. This isn't a fake it till you make it kind of situation. What I'm talking about is the real, messy, lived through it version of the growth mindset that you have to believe in your bones before you can ever teach it to your own kids. Because the growth mindset, it can't be faked, and our kids see right through it. And they see through us, and they watch what we do far more than what they listen to what we say. And so you actually have to live the growth mindset for it to really be inherited by your kids. So today we're talking about why celebrating those small wins are really important, and how those small wins change everything for our kids and for us. And I'm going to share some of my own personal story, because if you're going to trust me to guide you through something like developing a growth mindset or just parenting in general, you definitely deserve to know kind of what I've lived through too as well. So I want to make sure that you guys know and understand my own journey. Your time is precious, and the time that you have to yourself to dedicate it to something like listening to this podcast or watching what I'm putting out there on YouTube, I actually have something that you can learn from, you can impart into your own parenting journey. So let's get into it. So picture this. It's the Tuesday after Halloween. Your kid just had a meltdown over math homework again. You're exhausted, they're frustrated, and you're both wondering why this has to be so hard. Does this sound familiar? Here's what I've learned, that the problem isn't that our kids aren't making progress. It's not that the homework isn't getting done. It's that we're so focused on the finishing line, which is the completed homework, that's the only thing we can focus on. And I think we're measuring the wrong thing. We're looking at the completed homework, the good grade, the clean room, and we're missing the 95% of the journey that actually matters. So let's talk about what the growth mindset even is. A Stanford psychologist, Carol Dweck, spent decades researching how our beliefs about intelligence shapes our own success. And she wrote a book called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, and she identified two fundamentally different ways people view their abilities. One is a fixed mindset, which is where your intelligence and talent are innate. You either have it or you don't. Success proves that you're smart, failure proves that you're not. Or it's the growth mindset, which is where intelligence and abilities can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. And that success comes from the process, not just the outcome. So here's the kicker. Parents' mindsets directly influence their children's mindsets. When we celebrate only A's or we celebrate the perfect scores, we're accidentally teaching our kids that their worth is tied to outcome, not effort, not strategy, and definitely not growth. For neurodiverse families, this matters even more. Our kids often work twice as hard for half the visible results. If we celebrate the finish line, we're missing everything that actually builds things like resilience, perseverance, and confidence. Research shows that adults with growth mindsets experience better work performance, they have a greater openness to feedback, and they have a higher motivation to learn from their failures. But here's what really matters for parents. Growth mindsets are modifiable, meaning that we can learn them and we can teach them. So let me tell you about my kiddo, Riley. He has ADHD, and homework used to be an absolute battlefield. I sit with him, watch him struggle, and then feel my own anxiety rising and just questioning things like, why can't he just focus? Why does this take so long? And then I shifted my lens. Instead of celebrating only the completed assignments, I started noticing things like when he sat down without being asked. Even if it was 20 minutes late, he still sat down. Or he tried a new strategy when the first one didn't work. Or he asked for help instead of just shutting down and giving up. Or that he took a break and came back instead of giving up. Those were the tiny wins. And when I started celebrating them out loud, everything changed with him. Dweck's research shows that people with fixed mindsets set lower risk goals to protect their own self-image. They avoid challenges because failure feels like proof that they're not smart enough. But people with growth mindsets seek challenges. They see failure as information, not identity. And here's the most beautiful part. When we celebrate small wins, we're teaching our kids that progress, not perfection, is the goal. A 2019 study published in Nature found that even short growth mindset interventions, like under 60 minutes, improved academic achievement, especially for struggling students. Imagine what happens when we make growth mindset language part of our daily family culture. Here's where I really need to get real with you, because all of this, celebrating small wins, reframing failure, teaching resilience, it doesn't work if you don't believe it yourself. A growth mindset cannot be faked. Your kids are watching you. They're watching how you respond when you fail. They're watching how you talk about yourself when things get hard. And they're watching whether you give up or keep going. So before we talk about how to teach this to your kids, let's talk about you. Do you believe that you can grow, that you can learn new things, that your circumstances don't define your future? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't always believe that, but I lived it. And that's the only reason I can teach it to my kids. So to really understand why I believe in this growth mindset so much and why it is really important to me, I have to give you a little bit of personal history. So I had always planned on getting my master's degree in my 20s. So I thought I would get my undergrad, go straight into grad school. That was the plan, but life definitely had other ideas. I moved out of my parents' house 2 weeks after I graduated from high school. So I was 18 years old. I was completely on my own. And then my father passed away when I was 20, in the middle of a semester, actually. And he had kind of always been my cheerleader, even though he wasn't supporting me financially anymore and I was financially on my own and doing this adult thing by myself. He was always there in the background. If something really bad happened, I knew that he would be my first phone call. So I finished my undergrad early. It took me about 3.5 years. I took 15 to 18 credit hours every semester because I had to get out of school. I needed to get done quickly and I just couldn't afford to drag it out. I worked 2 to 3 jobs at a time. I scheduled all my classes like 2 days a week, back to back, morning into the evening, so that I could work all the other days. I worked as a receptionist. I worked waiting tables. I was a runner for a real estate company downtown at one point. If there was a job, I worked it. And it was not easy. When I first started teaching, I continued to wait tables just to pay off my student loans, which I actually did. And then life happened and grad school dreams just faded. It just didn't happen. I got married, had kids, found myself in an abusive relationship that took several years to get out of. When I left that relationship, I left with an 18-month-old and a 4-year-old. And I was on my own raising them with my limited teacher salary. So I was delivering groceries on the side to make sure that we had food on the table and clothes on our back and a bed for my kids to sleep in. And obviously my plans got completely railroaded at this point. The path looked nothing like I thought it would look. I was in my late 30s, had not gotten a master's degree, but the dream was still there. I still was thinking about going back to school at some point. So we fast forward a couple years and I was remarried. My kids were older and I was just done with only teaching history. I wanted more and I wanted to shift into special education. I wanted to build something bigger. So at 41 years old, with 4 kids, a home to run, and a new marriage, I went back to grad school. And I attacked it the same way I did my undergrad. I just powered through. I ended up taking some extra classes to get an instructional design certification because ultimately this business is what I wanted to do. And that was the goal. And I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I just took the next right step. And the reason why I did it was because I wanted my kids to see that you don't stop when life hits you. In September of 2024, my ex-husband, my kid's father, died. And my boys lost their dad. Their world dramatically changed overnight. They ended up having the best school year of their lives. Not because the grief went away, not because it was easy, but because we didn't allow life circumstances to dictate our dreams. We don't wallow. When things are difficult, we just take the next right step, whatever that looks like. And this is why the growth mindset resonates with me so much. I have always lived it, and it is so hard. I clearly have life events that Lifetime movies would break into multiple scripts, but in the end, I just refused to live a life that circumstances told me I had to live. The plan may be delayed, the path may look different than I thought, but the end goal is always there. If I had to crawl across the finish line to get that degree because that's all I could do, then let's go. That's what I was going to do. And I recognize that I did not do that on my own. My husband was a great support. I've also been through quite a bit of therapy, including trauma therapy specifically to deal with a lot of the after effects of my first marriage and the abuse that I lived under for so long. Both my children have been in and worked with therapists as well. And we've had to regrow our life. And that growth mindset was always in the back of our mind, that we just weren't going to let life circumstances decide how our end of our story was going to look. And I get it. I get when your kid still hasn't finished their homework, it's 9 p.m., that celebrating effort can feel hollow and maybe fake. But here's the shift. You're not celebrating the mess. You're celebrating the moment that they chose to keep trying. So things that you can do to kind of instill a growth mindset in your kids is to name the strategy, not the outcome. So instead of saying something like, great job on your math homework, try saying something like, I noticed you used the multiplication chart when you got stuck. That's smart problem solving. And here's why this works. You're highlighting the process, which in this case is using a tool instead of the result. This teaches kids that strategies, not innate talent, can lead to success. Another thing you can do at home is to acknowledge effort over ease. So instead of saying something like, oh, you're so good at reading, try saying, you worked really hard to sound out that tricky word. I saw you trying different strategies. Again, why this works, we're praising being good at something reinforces a fixed mindset that the being good part is the end goal, but praising the effort reinforces that hard work can lead to growth. And then looking at something like failure. So reframing the concept of failure as data, as information. Instead of something like, it's okay, you'll do better next time, try, what did you learn from this? What would you try differently? So recently, my 12-year-old came home with an assignment for a leadership position at his school. And part of it was to write an essay about what leadership is and how you demonstrate those characteristics. He is not the best writer. He is in 7th grade, so his writing skills are just starting to be developed. And so his first draft was not great. I didn't understand it. He was talking about things that were not leadership, and he was talking about events in his life rather than personality traits or characteristics. So we sat down and I didn't look at his essay and pick it apart. I talked about essays in general, and I said, when you're writing a letter about yourself, here's some good guidelines. And remember your essay structure. You need to have topic sentences, and you need to have these paragraphs that make sense and that the topics are the same, and just general ideas about writing. So he went back upstairs, sat down, started typing again, came down, and there was definitely still some things that needed to be adjusted. So he said, why don't we talk about this after dinner? I'm going to take a break. I was like, okay, sounds like a plan. After dinner, he opened up his laptop again and took another shot at his essay. And his third version was much better. And when he finished, what I told him was, great job on this essay. I noticed that you got frustrated and you took a little break. that you integrated the feedback that I was giving you and you didn't take it personally, that you just took it as a growth opportunity. And that's exactly what successful people do. And he looked at me surprised. He said, "Really?" I said, "Really? That's called perseverance. And it's one of the most important skills you can have." And that moment, that small win, and these tiny small wins add up to a kid who believes he can handle hard things. So when I picked him up from school and he did not get into the leadership program, his response to it was, "At least I learned how to write a better essay, and I'll just try again next year." That is growth mindset. 2 years ago, this kid would have been devastated. He would have been in tears. He would have been very distraught about this losing this opportunity, or that he would have spoken about himself negatively. But as we've been working on this growth mindset mentality throughout the home, he really took that and proved that he is listening to this idea of it's always an opportunity to learn rather than a disappointment. So here's my challenge to you for this week. Pick one area where your child is struggling. Instead of focusing on the outcome, maybe finish homework, clean bedroom, or a completed chore, look for the small wins. Look for things like they started even if they didn't finish it, or they tried a new strategy. Did they ask for help instead of shutting down? Did they come back after a break? Name it, celebrate it, and make it visible. Because here's the truth, progress isn't linear, especially for neurodiverse kids. But when we celebrate those tiny wins, the effort, the strategy, the comeback, we're teaching our kids that growth matters more than perfection. And that changes everything. Throughout this entire month of November, we are going to be focusing on practical ways to integrate a growth mindset into your daily life and into your family's daily life. So I really appreciate you being here today, and hopefully this resonated with you. If it did, I'd love for you to share it with another parent who maybe needs to hear it. And I'd love for you to send me some comments and let me know how you are going to work on this throughout this week. Tell me about your small wins that you're celebrating with your kiddo this week. And remember that there's tons of resources. Head over to insighteducationacademy.org. There's freebies, there's courses, there's a whole community of parents who are doing this work right alongside with you. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. I'll see you next week.